Good morning. This is John from the Springs Mennonite Church. It's good to be with you today. I hope you're having a good week. The weather's been really nice around here, and I hope it has been where you are too. I have a verse I'd like to share with you, a couple verses actually, from Romans chapter 8. Beginning with verse 15, we find these words. So you have not received a spirit that makes you fearful slaves. Instead, you received God's Spirit when He adopted you as His own children. Now we call Him Abba, Father, for His Spirit joins with our spirit to affirm that we are God's children. And since we are His children, we are His heirs. In fact, together with Christ, we are heirs of God's glory. The passage starts out with a very familiar note that you find many places in the Bible. It says, you have not received a spirit that makes you fearful slaves. Now, what's it talking about there? It's talking about being a slave to fear. Yeah, fear. We all know what fear is. Some people are afraid of failure. Some people are afraid of getting sick. Some people are afraid of this and that. There's no end to what we can be afraid of. And the thing about being afraid is it paralyzes us and keeps us from doing anything worthwhile and creative. In fact, fear, if we give it the opportunity, will take over your entire life. And you become not worthless, but you think you are. And so Paul starts out by saying, you have not received that kind of spirit. But instead, in place of, you received God's Spirit when He adopted you as His own children. So now we call Him Abba, Father. When God comes and lives in your life, you change. I mean, you really do change. You change in many ways, but one of them that he mentions here is that we get adopted into God's family. So much so that we now call Him Abba, Father. Now, you've probably heard that word before. It does have some good meanings, but we don't use it much anymore. But if we could translate it into current vernacular, we would say it means, we call Him Daddy. Daddy is a term that usually children give their parents. It's a term of enamorment. It's a term of devotion. It's a term of closeness. Now, I don't know what you called your father. I didn't call mine Daddy. I called him Dad. And some of my kids call me Dad, and some of them call me Daddy, and a few of them call me Father. But they all, in their minds, mean something similar. It means that we are so close to God that we can see Him as a close, intimate partner in life. And because of that, we go back to the first verse, we don't have to be afraid. We don't have to be a slave to fear. Now, he goes on to say, which is really kind of interesting, for His Spirit joins with our spirit to affirm that we are God's children. And since we are His children, we are His heirs. What does it mean to be the heir of God? Well, in days of old, in mythologies, people took on godly postures. Some gods took on human form. Some were half and half. And as they tried to explain how life exists. Now, while we think of it as mythology, which means it was a myth, they thought it was real. They really did think that God had merged with humans in certain situations, in certain categories. Now here, the Bible is saying that our spirits merge with God's Spirit, so we become heirs. We become the recipient. That's what an heir is. It's someone who gets something. I'm the heir to the estate, so I get the estate. I'm going to leave my fortune to my heirs, the people who inherited. Everybody doesn't get that, just the heirs. But here it says everyone who does this, everyone who receives the Spirit of God into their life gets to be an heir of all of the goodness and grace and love and compassion that God has. And that's for you too. And it goes on to say here, in fact, since we're heirs, in fact, together with Christ we are heirs to God's glory. I don't know if you've ever thought about God's glory. It's one of those kinds of things that you really can't wrap your head around it, as some people would say. The glory of God is the majesty, the brilliance, the beautifulness, the incomparable power and presence. I just sort of sense that God is this incredible being with force that my mind can't comprehend. But yet it says here, when we invite him into our life, we become heirs. And because of that, we don't have fear, or we don't have to. Because of that, we become the recipients of everything he has, including his glory. Now, I don't know if you think about yourself in that fashion today. I think perhaps you should, but I don't know that you do. A lot of people think that they're not very worthwhile. A lot of people think that God has forgotten them. And a lot of people who don't think either one of those thoughts just sort of feel like, well, God's okay for a part of the day or a part of the week, but the rest of the time I'm doing all right by myself. Well, you know, folks, maybe you're doing all right by yourself. But yet, you can do even better if you let God walk beside you. So I hope today you will consider where you are in this journey of life, and this journey towards something that we do not know exactly, but we do know is exactly there. And I hope that during this journey you'll invite God to come into your life so that you can join him on this journey together. Well, thanks for listening. If you have a prayer concern or a need, just let us know. We'll do everything we can, as fast as we can, to help meet your need. God bless you. I'll talk to you again.